Dr. Wakild, you are back. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing well. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful. We go down to Ontario, where I grew up, and have Thanksgiving with old friends. And it's such a fun tradition. My kids love it. And it's like we go far enough that we're traveling, but it's not hard travel. It's just, enough time for the turkey to digest and and get home. How about you?
I had the first holiday since we've had kids where I was like, oh, because my youngest is 9, right? I have 3 boys. They're energetic, right? They're not kids that would like sit on a couch and just like watch a movie and be quiet. It's like, no, man, they're going everywhere.
Yeah.
And this was the first holiday when we had just like obviously all 3 boys there, a lot of family, and dude, like I actually ate a full meal without leaving the table, and I drank a glass of wine, which I was like, this is wild, and then I sat on the couch. I was like, this is it. Oh my God.
What holidays should be for?
Yeah, right. Had both pieces of cake, pie, the pumpkin and the apple. They were delicious. Oh, they're the best.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was a good time. Listen, you and I always have the best conversations. And so I asked you to come on again, and it was really like dealer's choice on what we're talking about. The last conversation we had, I felt like, obviously, I've thought about your references to Napoleon Dynamite since then, because I really had never looked at it through a lens of Idaho. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized, like, hey, you had some really good points about if you know something about Idaho or you know enough, then you see the like inside poking jokes, right? And if you don't, then it's, then it was what my experience, which is a story about friendship. And again, I don't think either of us are wrong. I think we're both right. But now that I see it through your lens, it's like, oh, it is like Tina the llama and like, Uncle Rico in this giant, wheat field in the middle of nowhere, and like the sand dunes and everything. It's like, okay, so this is like distinctly Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think about place a lot, and I think about place in like an academic sense, but I also think about it in terms of preparing students to go on and be productive, wonderful citizens as part of my day job at the university. And I want to cultivate in them this sense of place. And the very idea of a sense of place has an academic background, but I think it also has this really important effect out in the real world. And we see manifestations of that in lots of really interesting ways. So a super recent one was that the city of Boise just passed the open space levy by more than 80%, right? And so like this is the 3rd time the city has voted to tax itself to protect something that in many accounts is intangible. Right? Like, what is open space? It's nothing, right? It's space that is empty, but it's also not, right? It's the very fabric of this place, and it's part of what makes Boise iconic and what it is. And it's something that's kind of hard to describe unless you live in it in a daily fashion and you understand it, right? And I think that those mechanisms for respecting place and for understanding how it creates within us a sense of belonging are really important to the Idaho I know and love, and also to what it means to become part of this place and what that looks like. And so there's ways that you can see it. You can look at the city of Boise and look at the way the neighborhoods are designed and the way the original foothills levy really sort of capped where development sprawled up the mountains. And this is unique if you think about Salt Lake, if you think about Tucson, where I went to graduate school, we were just talking about that. If you think about lots of cities in California, where you're from, mostly rich people move up into the hills, right? And that becomes the geography of the city, is that the downtown gets more and more congested and packed, and people sort of crawl up the hills.
Right. And the lowlies live in the flatlands.
In the flatlands, yes.
But you have the Oakland and Berkeley Hills that have the most oppressively beautiful views. They're also wildly unattainable. They're built, the construction cost is astronomical, because you have to build like a 4-story thing, because you're like literally going vertically up, and your house is attached to the hillside along the way. But you have sunsets there and views of the earth that are just, they're wild. But yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and there's lots of value in those. There's really interesting history in those neighborhoods. But the part of the geography of Boise that's so interesting to me is that we've decided that those views, those sunrises and sunsets, will be for everybody. Right. They'll be available through a trail system that's maintained collaboratively and through access points that exist, all through the neighborhoods and the foothills. And so they're not private, right? There are people that live up there and there are particular areas that get developed. So I'm not saying entirely, but if Boise was in California, the whole road up to Bogus would be filled with houses. Right? And it's not. And that is something that, again, 3 times, an overwhelming majority of people that live here have said, yeah, I care about that, right? That's important to me. And that is enough for me to say, I'll spend a little bit of my money to make sure that that maintains that way. And so...
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I had the... Brad Wilson, I believe, is the GM of Bogus, correct?
Yes. He's great.
He was great. And he came on, really enjoyed the conversation with him. But one thing that was kind of clarified or refined in that conversation for me is the capitalistic mechanism within California providing a landscape and a recreational or life experience for very, very few. Right. So, for instance, you talk about Bogus, right? Like you can get a family ski pass for like $1,200 a season or something. I'm sure it's even less. Like I'm screwing it up, but it's very, very attainable. Now, skiing in as a whole, like you still got to get skis. You got to spend time going up. Okay, fine. But $1,200 for, a family is not that terrible. When I grew up, I actually learned how to ski at Big Sky in Montana. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I was fortunate to go skiing a little bit like in my early teen years in Tahoe. And I was like, okay, cool. I never really skied again after I was like 13 because it was so expensive. I went once when I was like 25 or 26 and it was like $200 lift ticket, this all. And you have this capitalistic mechanism that grabbed some of the most beautiful outdoor recreation areas in Northern California, in the ski areas, in the Tahoe area, and they just capitalized them. And now it is not available for everyone. It's available for some, but man, you better have a dump truck of money.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the coolest things about Bogus, right? It's a nonprofit ski hill. Mm-hmm. And those are really rare in the Mountain West, in the world, frankly. And because it's a nonprofit, what they work for is access, right? And I remember in the early 90s when they cut the cost of the pass in half because they'd realized they were going to price themselves out of a future generation of skiers. And I learned to ski in Ontario, taking the city bus up to Brundage in McCall, which is not a nonprofit, but it's a great mountain to learn to ski on. And the city of Ontario would pay a bus driver every Saturday to take kids up so that parents didn't have to drive the 2 hours up and back. And so that meant that kids like me got to learn in this really low risk and super cheap and affordable way. And so you pick up some skis and some boots from the ski swap, and basically you're really good to go. And I think almost every recreationally facing use in Idaho has a way to do that to make it more accessible. And that's a really important part of the fabric. So Boise Bike Project, for example, and mountain biking, you can think about all of the programs the cities run. We can go back to 4-H and the different ways that 4-H sponsors, understanding of animals and different ethics of that. And I think that there's this amazing way that good things happen when people care about the places in which they live. And we can think about that as investing in them, but mostly these places need attention and they need the emotional infrastructure that it takes to respect them and to care for them. And I don't think that our policy mechanisms or our sort of administrative layers give enough attention to the ways that affection manifests itself in care for the more than human world, right? For these places that are not human built, they have been shaped by humans over time, but they become the infrastructure of our lives. And the ways that we interact with them and the ways that we use them shape us gently, right, on a daily basis, but they also sort of shape our dispositions and they shape the reasons why people begin to feel like they belong in a place. And I think that there are really demonstrable sort of downstream effects of those. So, for example, we can think about the world of conspiracy theories, right? And why do people fall for conspiracy theories? I mean,
first off, they're not all wrong.
I'm not saying
That's a problem.
I find them fascinating.
No. But what I'm saying is I think there's a draw to like, is there a deeper truth to the things that I'm wondering about?
Yes.
And I think we also have an inherent desire to root out bad actors and like rid them from our midst. And, so we have a lot of different things. And then that leads people to be desirous of finding these things. So then in the absence of a prevalent one, they're like, okay, but what if this is happening because of all these, it's like the flat earthers. It's like, okay, but what's the point? There's like, well, it's control, right? So they have an answer. They're just looking for a problem. And it's like, oh, the government wants control of us. Therefore the world has to be flat. Like that's how they're doing it. It's like, Anyway, those just some ideas.
Well, absolutely. I mean, control is a big part of it, but I think there's also this aspect of it that conspiracy theories give people a sense of belonging. Right? They give them a particular identity in ways that it is absent in other aspects of our life, that it used to come from, oh, you work for, let's say, Reynolds Tobacco, and you go to the corporate picnic every year and, you have a Christmas party and you belong to that. Well, a lot of that structure of belonging and identity has crumbled in the last 50 years, right? And if you drive for Uber or deliver for Amazon, do you get it? Christmas party? I don't know. Probably not.
Probably as a contractor. Yeah.
As a contractor, a subcontractor of a subcontractor.
So the question then, if I may throw this out there, the question is not why do conspiracy theories exist? The question is why is it that people can't stop talking about conspiracy theories at like Thanksgiving? Because when everybody's saying this is what I did for work, or this is what the kids are doing in school, or this is, I was at this sporting event, whatever it is, this is part of my identity because this is where I feel like I belong. So it's not that it exists for the character. It's that the individual makes it part of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sense of belonging and that sense of identity fosters a kind of solidarity, right? Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying about the flat earth. And I think it makes sense. And then that inspires this sense of agency over like, oh, we're not going to be taken advantage of, right? Or we have an alternative that is much better. And I think that there is a function here, and this is how we get back to place. I think there's a function here for particular attributes of a landscape that might provide an alternative way of belonging. If we start to recognize the ways that that belonging is meaningful and impactful, especially for new generations, right?
Yeah, I was just in DC and I interviewed Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida. She's a congresswoman.
Yeah.
And she straight up was like, look, I think the government was involved in assassinating JFK. I was like, oh God.
We're going to go there, huh?
Yeah. Well, she's full on. And she also has I think she's on some committee that's like studying UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, so like UFOs. And yeah, it's like she was also talking about like the Epstein files and everything. I'm like, because I was actually meeting with her it was either the day they voted to release them or the day after. And so it's like, dude, there's too much here. And here's one for you. I interviewed a gentleman. I interviewed this individual called Dr. Pate, who used to work for St. Luke's. He was a CEO for St. Luke's. Okay. Yeah. And I also interviewed a doctor by the name of Dr. John Tribble, who's on the Southwest District Board of Health. He's the physician representative on the board. There were some things going on with them about the Southwest District Health revoked one of the therapies that was offered. And there was, Dr. John Tribble was on one side and Dr. Pate, who was not part of Southwest District Health, but came in to have, a conversation with me about it. I just tried to upload those. I didn't even publish them. I uploaded them to YouTube without making them visible, and YouTube yanked them. And I was like, hang on a sec. This is the CEO of St. Luke's Health, or former CEO, and he's advocating for this therapy and many others in this or not even necessarily advocating, talking about, but he was on the side of like, yeah, this is not a bad thing. You can't even upload those. So when you have people that, I mentioned this to somebody, and again, tying back to your place and belonging, I mentioned this to somebody, and this individual's like, yeah, you got to post them to Rumble, right? So just to get the episodes out, I had to make a Rumble account. And then, yeah, Rumble's like another YouTube that doesn't screen the same way, right? Censor. And it was very funny because once I successfully uploaded them, this person was like, welcome to the resistance. I was like, oh, you want me to join the group. You want this to be part of my identity, right? You want me to internalize this, like, we are a collection of people that have seen the ugly, and now we are banding together against the ugly and against the repression and all these things. And it's like, okay, it did work on Rumble. I will tell you that. And YouTube obviously took it down. Absolutely. But this is not going to become part of my identity. Right. Like, it doesn't, like, I got to talk to Dr. Wakild later. I can't do this right now, right? Like, whatever it is. Right. But again, people they want you to join in with them and be like, you're one of us now, right? Right?
Right.
Like,
yes.
Hang on, man.
Yes. Well, and I guess what I'm suggesting is that it doesn't need to go that far. And in fact, there's something that brings us all together. And one of those somethings can be affection for place, or respect and identification with the attributes of a particular place. And scholars have spent a lot of time, geographers in particular, thinking about what is place and what makes a place. And a place is a conjunction of natural features and cultural features, right? And the ways that they intertwine to give a location of a particular set of elements that are recognizable. And sometimes those are invented, right? So if you think about Santa Fe, New Mexico with the beautiful adobe, well, the adobe was invented in the Great Depression, right? Like, that is not 16th century, design. That is something that was invented by
what's
architects.
The adobe?
The adobe of the Central Plaza in Santa Fe.
Oh, gotcha.
At
Okay.
the La Fonda Plaza, and the sort of Santa Fe aesthetic was, not from time immemorial.
Right.
It was invented in the 1920s and 1930s to reconstruct the city. And lots of places have an intertwining of those historic features and also the ones that are natural. So if you think about sagebrush in our ecosystem as being part of not just what we see because of the ecology of it, but part of what we smell after a rain, and part of sort of the fabric of what makes a place unique and what makes its setting in the mountains something that's recognizable. And those features, as they intertwine, can be really comforting. And so before I lived in Boise, I lived in the South. And my husband's from the South. I love the South. There's a lot of things that I think are really interesting about it, but I found it completely claustrophobic. I could never see the horizon, right? I could never see out. And for me, that there were too many trees, right? It was too dense. And that sort of claustrophobic feeling was something that made me never feel quite at home. And as soon as I got back out here and could look out over the horizon and see the sunset, it was just this really comforting feeling. And I've talked to plenty of people from the South that feel the opposite, right? In the landscapes of southwestern Idaho, they feel exposed and vulnerable and really different. And all of the ways that we manifest those feelings in a particular place are particular to individuals, but they also reflect on the choices that are made collectively in a community. And I think those choices are really interesting in how we create belonging. And the sorts of symbols of that affect that state ideas plainly also become part of how we understand ourselves and understand a particular place.
Yeah, to that point about being natural and also man-made, I mean, look no further than people that move here, and you hear all the time, I don't like the HOA. The HOA isn't even a physical thing that exists, right?
Right.
But the HOA and new construction homes, like, I'm not great with a new construction home, but like, is the roof different? Am I experiencing the foundation different? Like, it's just, there's a stifling of who I am when I engage in a brand new home, in that part of who I am is this person that improves and creates and builds. And I, express myself through carpentry and all of these different things. Right. And that portion of me does not find representation if you're in a brand new home, because what are you going to fix in a brand new home? Like, you're not fixing anything. And when everything looks the same, again, the quote cookie cutter concept, where it's like every house looks the same, even if they physically are slightly different, they all look the same. There's something in that where it's like I get like a little, like I feel like I'm suffocating a little bit. And I initially moved here the first time I'd ever lived in an HOA, and I didn't like have a lot of run-ins with them or anything. But again, a brand new house, and it's like, I thought it would be really cool, and it wasn't. It was like, for me, it didn't work. My grandmother loved new houses. She would move like by the time she turned like 60, she had enough money where she kind of like move every 5 years. She'd get a brand new house, and then and this was in Fresno. So like, you're not talking about really expensive places, but, the market was going up as she was aging. So she was fine doing that. But for me, moving to the older house, which I did earlier this year, it was like, oh, here we go. And I'm hanging the drywall incorrectly. I might mind incorrectly. Didn't stagger the joints, didn't go, but like, that to me, I'm like, okay, great. Now there are so many projects, it's almost overwhelming. But man, I feel like I can breathe finally.
Right. And nobody's going to tell you what color you're going to paint the house, or what you get to put in the yard. Those sorts of things that are there. Yeah. Just
having that. Again, those man-made traits that allowed me to feel like I belonged in a particular property or on a particular street. You know what I really saw? This is what we drove by when we saw the house was for sale. My wife and I were drinking coffee, drive by. We drove like 2 houses up, and I was like, stop the car. She stops. I'm like, you see that? She was like, yeah. I was like, that's a Mercury. Like, person who owns a Mercury, that's the street I want to live on.
That's our new neighbor.
It's not a Wagoneer, some giant white battering ram. I was like, that car is from the 80s, and it's champagne color. Yeah. We are in it to win it with that neighbor. It was like a Mercury Sable or something.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh my God. That was an 80s car, right?
Oh,
I think it was like way 80s and 70s, right? That was back when like Buick, Pontiac, oh dude, it was so great. And it had that disgusting 80s like half teardrop shape on both sides. Like, oh, I love it.
We were on a bike ride with another kid, and he said, is that a DeLorean? It's like, no.
I just spilled all over myself.
Just a Trans Am. Yeah, you did.
I got excited. I got excited. Oh, I'm getting too worked up over the cars. Yes. Yeah, the Trans, those are such cool cars.
Such cool cars.
You know what I really have been wanting to get? I really want to get one of the Datsuns or boxy Datsuns or Nissans from the early 90s, like the Nissans that were really square and had the big front end. And then what were those slats they put in the rear view mirror that were like horizontal slats so you could see through, but the sun wouldn't come in? I want one of those bad boys so bad. Put a big sound system in like I'm 17 again or something.
There you go.
Not that I ever had one, but there was this kid in band who he was in percussion, and dude, he had a red Nissan, and it was so cool looking. And I've seen them occasionally when they're like really taken care of. I'm like, that's the play. The little Datsun truck that you could put in your back pocket and go to the hardware store.
My dear friend from Ontario her dad was a mechanic in Payette, and they had the coolest cars, but she drove a Monte Carlo. Yes, that was her first car. And so when we showed up in the high school parking lot, you heard us coming. It was awesome. Three Shades of Brown.
Three Shades of Brown.
Love it. Love the Monte Carlo.
Whatever happened to the El Camino? Right, like the pickup that was also just like a slash sedan.
I have thought many times when we see the Cybertrucks of the El Camino being the like early.
Dude, that was the play.
Early predecessor. It's not a truck. It's not a car.
It's a party.
What? Yeah, I guess. It's a party. It's something. It was something.
What about the old like the El Camino? And then I saw a Volkswagen station wagon the other day.
Oh.
Yeah. And those two cars, I was like, that's when America was trying to grapple with like, do we fight with the foreign car manufacturers and get utility, but in a smaller size? Or do we just let it go and get what we have now, which is like the Raptor?
Right.
Just let it go, man. Like, don't even worry about it. 0 miles free or a city, 1 mile per gallon, highway. Just
Heavier
go.
than a
Yeah,
semi.
bigger.
Yeah.
Because that was the era of the late 70s and 80s when like Toyota and stuff were taking over with like the little teeny cars, right? So they're like, oh, well, we'll make these little boxier. I'm remembering that correctly, right?
Yes,
Like
yeah,
that was
the
the
Rabbit,
idea.
yeah.
Dude, the Rabbit was awesome. What was the car they had in Wayne's World? The Gremlin.
The Gremlin.
With
Oh,
the
the
giant
Gremlin.
back window.
Big window. Oh, so great.
God bless it, man. We're far
else would you
afoot.
do that? Yes, yeah. I don't know.
There was a mountain that, speaking of places, the place I moved to when I moved here was a place that had an unobstructed view. Neighborhood could see directly to Bogus, right? Where I moved from, I was 3 miles from the base of Mount Diablo, and I would ride or run. I'd do a lot of trail running around Mount Diablo. And by the way, you're 100% right. As you went up farther and farther up the mountain, the houses were bigger, way more expensive. There was actually a trail that that I went trail running on very frequently. You had to run through this rich guy's backyard because he had like 10 acres and there was an easement, right? Yeah. So like he had to allow the trail, the East Base Trail, to go through his yard, and there were gates you had to close, and be respectful and stuff, but you're running across this person's property because he owns part of the mountain now. You're like, what in the heck, right? But dude, after the rains, the smell of the wild like jasmine and stuff and lavender, I can still smell it.
Oh,
and
sure.
Yeah, man, talk about feeling at home.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
Well, and there are all these components that go into that sense of nostalgia, right? And I think that there is something worth understanding about what it is that makes people feel like they belong in a place, not just in a group, right? Not just in the conspiracy theory, not maybe in a sort of particular
the rumble world,
right. Any kind of self-identified abstract community, but in a particular place, because I think that there's a lot of strength in how we can invest in those places and make them accessible and more comfortable for people who then in turn are willing to take care of them and make sure that they live up to our expectations. And the open space levy is one really good example of Boise doing that over time. I think that there are lots of ways that public lands have had that investment, and I think that that's changing in really important ways. So we can think about, for example, what used to be the billionaire class of Carnegies and Rockefellers, right? And so much of the infrastructure for the first national parks came from this obligation by a billionaire class to give back to the public and to invest in that. So Grand Teton National Park, for example, was almost entirely a private donation of land bought by Rockefeller and then donated to become part of that park, right? Sure. Same with Acadia in Maine and lots of examples of Carnegie property. And so there was this sort of obligation to at least pretend like they were giving back, right? Or investing in something for a larger group of people. And those have also, I think, frayed in some really interesting ways, in that the sort of billionaire investments in something that is tangible for the future have kind of evaporated. And so that leaves it to me and you to say, yeah, like we'll raise our own taxes. But it also opens up this question, I think, of what makes the fabric of a community and who gets to come in and who gets to belong. And I think those are some of the issues that are kind of challenging this idea of place for Idaho right now, and for how people, whether they've been here 10 minutes or 10 decades, are trying to be part of this dialogue about what makes a place special and what those components are and where those boundaries are drawn. And how that happens is I think part of what leaves us in this conversation about belonging and kind of loneliness and what we want for future generations to understand about the places that have had meaning in our lives. And I work with a group of scholars at the university, and we have a grant that's called Place. And it's about taking master's level students interested in environmental topics and asking them to spend time immersed in a particular community and trying to understand a problem that community faces, whether it's growth and development or wildland fire or energy development, and try and understand it from the perspective of that community. And our hypothesis, right, is that this particular self-directed, immersive experience will have an impact on the trajectory of those students' choices, right, and how they go on to live their lives. And it's also based in this theory or this approach that place-based experiences where you are embodied and immersed in the habits of a particular community can help us understand ourselves better. So we're not saying that a student that goes and studies McCall has to move to McCall, but that the 10 weeks that they spend there will shape how they become a contributing citizen to whatever community that they decide to belong in.
I've been thinking about this one a lot, especially since the last time you and I spoke. I kind of articulated that I struggle with this as well, like belonging, place. Like it happened again that when I went back for the holiday to see family, man, stepping off the plane and just feeling the haze of the Bay Area on my skin. Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, like I know you. I know it's like a hug from an old friend.
Totally is.
You're like, oh.
Totally is.
Then it turns out it's actually a hug from like an ex-girlfriend. And for the first 5 minutes, you're like, oh, I remember this. This was great. And then you're like, oh, wait, I remember why. I remember why we broke up. But I actually had this really interesting realization there thinking about that conversation that we had and that experience. And it was a liberating the thought train, because essentially I came to, look, this is a place and you do have fond memories of this place and you do have friends here. And when this, air hits you, like that's it. But it doesn't have to be much more than that, because you also are developing, like I was never, ever in a million years as integrated and educated and thoughtful about my prior home as I am to Idaho right now. Like I know more about this place and from like the underbelly, right? Like how we derive our power prices, right? Like I know things about this area that it's like, I would never in a million years have thought that I'd know this, and there's an aspect of belonging in that way that's kind of growing on me, where it's like, yeah, man, but like, you're part of this place too, because you occupy this very interesting niche here that, like nobody else really occupies. So it's like, okay, so I belong here in some way. And if I didn't, I would have likely been roundly rejected at some, but even with all that, you look at, when we're talking about place, I think one of the big struggles that people that move here, for instance, from California, one of the struggles they have is, if you want to talk about physical location, if you're moving from like Newport Beach to desert Idaho, there is nothing that's home about this place to you, right?
Totally unfamiliar.
Totally unfamiliar. They're moving. What means home to them, or what motivates them, is that they think that the political nature of this state will make them feel welcomed and placed. And I'm in the right place. These people are welcoming. I belong here. I belong here because of the politics. What I find very, very troubling is that I don't think most of the people understand the politics here.
Right.
But they move here to belong because of the politics that they anticipate they will find. And what they find is like Frank Church.
Right.
And then they find Cecil Andrus. And then they find, Governor Little, who's not some, like whatever people move here for almost exclusively political alignment, they will not find it, because those people are likely people that are wholly rejecting anything center or, left, and coming like, I want the hardest right I can possibly get. And they get here and they realize that this is a real struggle of pragmatism, right? There's a struggle of like, okay, but wait, what works? Right? Like there might be a time when we have to tax ourselves. There might be a time when we have to cut spending. There might be a time, all these things, and you can tend towards personal autonomy, individual liberty, financial responsibility, limited government. You can tend towards those things, but that's not an absolute, because we need to do things like, I don't know, pay for school, right? So like we have these struggles where people come here because they want to belong because of political alignment, but they don't actually know what the politics are here. And then you have this huge friction of like, wait a minute, this isn't Idaho. It's like, how do you know what's not Idaho? Yeah. You just got here. Like, this actually is Idaho. What you thought Idaho was, that's not what Idaho is, right. Nor has it ever been that.
Well, and looking at Idaho from the outside in has defined it for a really long time. But I think the other part of the question that's really interesting is like, how long does it take to become part of a place? Right. And what does it mean to become part of that? And I have spent 25 years studying Latin America, right? Spent lots of time in Mexico, Peru, right. Chile, all over. And it's one of the questions that really animates a lot of the research that I do. There's this amazing ecologist that spent 45 years studying this national park in Peru. And he went for half a year, every year for 40 years straight. And still, Peruvians would say, well, yeah, but he's not from here. And it's like, but he knows more about that part of the world than anyone else. 250 papers could tell you every plant, more plants than exist in the continental US are in that park. And he could name every one of them, right? But he's not from there. And so on the one hand, there's the people you're describing that just got here and are like, I want it to be like this because this is how I heard it is. And then there's people that have been here a long time that think that they also get to say the only thing that it is. Right. And that it's that authority that I'm from here, which is something that most people didn't choose. Right. Like my kids didn't choose to be born here. I mean, I'm glad they were. Right. They are, they like it. We tend to be very happy here, but they didn't choose that any more than I chose not to be Peruvian or, whatever. Right. And so like we do have a limited amount of choices when it comes to place. And historically speaking, the modern world is one that is made up of this paradox that even if you go nowhere, everyone around you moves. And so it's like you're moving because you're constantly interacting with new people, right? That are not necessarily from here. And so I think that there is this really natural impulse to say, but this is mine. I'm from here. This is what it is, without understanding how even if you don't move, it changes. And you can't be stuck in time. No place is a jar of strawberries up on a preserved on a shelf, right? They all dynamically get influenced by who comes and who stays and who leaves and what else decisions get made. And very much that shapes what a place is and kind of what it becomes. And so it's this really interesting mix between the feelings and the nostalgia and the familiarity, and then also the sort of cultivation of new ideas and the circulating of ideas as they come in that make place so interesting.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
You're very quiet today. It's
no,
very
I'm sorry. I'm
not used to it.
Yeah,
very pensive.
No, these conversations with you are so thought-provoking because here's one for you. You have the person who just moved here and wants it to be the way they thought it was. Then you have the person who's lived here forever just by chance, and they're the one saying that this is the way it is and I get to decide. The reason this is striking to me is because and again, just reflecting on my lived experience since I've been here, it's like, I don't know where I occupy.
Yeah. Because
I'm not trying to tell anybody what is, right? Or what the state is or what the state was. But I'm not somebody who's lived here forever. I'm not somebody who got here 10 minutes ago. And I do occupy this position where I arguably, as far as a private citizen goes, knows more about cross-industry things than anyone. So what does that mean? Is the nature of belonging somewhere a knowledge base? As you pointed out with the professor, is the nature of belonging somewhere permission from other people who self-declare that they are the ones that are allowed? Because I put this clip out, like, I don't know, it was a month ago or something. It doesn't matter. I put out a bunch every single day. And somebody, which was so hilarious, I think I was talking about I was just stating a fact, like not anything having to do with, what my opinion is, because like my opinion is terrible, but I was stating a fact of the state. And somebody was like, I can't believe we're letting this dumb Californian tell us what to do in Idaho. It's like, dude, I don't even know what to tell you. I'm not even telling you. I'm literally just delivering a fact. And I don't live in California. Like, my children live here. My wife lives here. I own a house here. I pay taxes here. I live, breathe, eat, sleep here. And it's so humorous that that comment to me was an articulation of a desire for me to relinquish control over who I am or what I am not to this person, right? And they're trying to get other people to participate with like, we should declare this person as X because we agree that we're the only ones that can do that. And it's such an interesting thing because it only works if you agree that the people that have been here for a long time do in fact have that decision. Now, mind you, it's also a problem because were I to defend myself and say, no, I know a lot about the state and I live here, then I'm also taking ownership of determining who belongs and who should. And it's like, dude, what a weird thing. Now, obviously, like, I just laugh at the comment and move on with my life. But it is this, it's occupying more of my mind now where it's like, wait, what am I in this state?
Yeah.
Like, what is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you lift up moderating voices, you work towards dialogue. I think there's so much to be lauded about the conversations you have and the ways that you get to the heart of an issue and really help people focus on the details that matter.
Yeah, but do I belong here? Yeah. That's the question.
Well, belonging, since I am the decider. Yeah, well, I mean, I think but that's, I think what people are feeling is this sense of displacement. Right. And that sense of displacement is coming from all kinds of different ways, right? Yeah. Crowds, it's coming from economic inequality. It's coming from, their kids not being able to buy a house, whatever the different pressures are. And that displacement results in this impulse to make others not belong. Right. And to push that out. And I think there are ways that we can invert that by saying, there is something special about this place and we can celebrate those things. And Governor Little has done this, right? He says he wants to make Idaho a place where his grandchildren want to stay.
Yes.
And then he'll joke and say, but now everybody else's grandkids want to come too, right? And so, I mean, he's articulating very much this sense of a place. And for a long time, place was defined by where your family was, right? And it was very much an impulse of like, you would not go beyond a certain distance from your family. And still, I mean, the statistics are pretty astounding. 80% of people live, within 30 miles of their family or something. It's still very much a family-based decision of where to live. And there's lots of really important ways we can think about how that shapes the decisions that people do and don't make and what that means for holidays and help with children and those sorts of things. But the other piece is that sort of the more upwardly mobile or college educated populations become, the more likely they are to find a new home, right? And to find a different place because they follow a job or for sort of economic or upwardly mobile decisions. I had the most wonderful taxi driver from the Boise airport, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago. And
You took a taxi?
I take an Uber to the airport. I always take a taxi home.
Yeah. Uber to taxi home. Yeah. You're a wild lady.
I know.
You are wild. So you go to there's like a taxi line?
There's like a line. Yeah, it's always still there. God bless it. Yeah, there are almost always people that moved here in the early 90s with the refugee program. So this guy was from Bosnia, right? And he had an accent. So I was like, oh, how long have you been in Boise? And he said, yeah, I've been in Boise for 34 years. Right. And then he goes on to tell this amazing story about how his kids grew up here and have had opportunities. One of them, I think, runs Camping World or something, right? And has sort of moved up in this company and just got offered the full management position, but he'd have to move to Wisconsin. And it would have doubled his salary. But he was like, no, I'm not leaving and I'm not going to leave that. And so I think there's this, you see it more in immigrant populations than you do in just sort of boring white people decision make
white people.
You see people make a decision based on the proximity to their family. And so as he was articulating the reasons,
what about my big fat Greek wedding? Like, that's boring white people.
Well, yeah, but that's like white people's excuse to be ethnic, right? Like that's
Is it?
Greek. Yes. Oh, I mean,
What do you mean white people's excuse? You're going to have to iron this one out for me. I'm not tracking.
that was a wonderful celebration of the ways in which ethnic culture from Europe have been mainstreamed in a way that makes people nostalgic to be able to celebrate the ways it brings family together.
Okay.
So that's what I mean about that. But
Okay,
like,
so you mean like somebody who's been like a European American who's been here for like 3 or 4 generations and lost the old ways from like the old country, and now you're just a boring white person who happens to be living here.
yes, which is me describing myself, right? With German and Norwegian and, sort of heritage many generations back, but that no longer sort of shapes the sorts of cultural traditions we
So
use
it's
to
not
celebrate
it's not
theirs.
necessarily boring white people as much as it's a more American-based independence and dilution of the nuclear family and the commitments to said family from a geographic obligation, like kind of obligation where it's like, yeah, once you get here and you're like 3 or 4 generations down, odds of you feeling obligated to live in like a 3-generation household or the necessity for you to live in a 3-generation household essentially evaporate. Like you don't have that anymore. If you had just moved here, first, second, maybe 3rd generation, fine. But by the time you hit 4th, it's like you're pretty firmly integrated into American independence and individualism, which is not rooted around the family. It's more rooted around consumer trends, employment trends, and things of that nature.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
Much
it's not
better
a,
articulated.
So it's not a boring white person. It's just somebody who is more captured by the consumeristic, me-focused American culture, which doesn't have obligations to go home for Thanksgiving necessarily, or maybe Thanksgiving, but like, I'm not going to live near you.
Right.
Right. It's the parents' obligation to move around where the kids move because the kids are moving for careers or love or whatever, and then parents have to travel for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the flip that's happened.
I've even noticed that within my own family. I have 3 boys. They're not that old yet, but the wife and I frequently talk about getting like little 1-bedroom places wherever the kids land. So we're already planning before our first kids even in high school, as they move away.
Yeah.
We're planning on them theoretically moving away. We don't know. I'd love them for say, but wherever they go,
right,
be it for employment or love or whatever it might be, being able to travel to them and see them to keep the family connection going in that way. But the obligation's on the older generation. It's not their generation to make it work where we are.
Right. And that there's no understanding of that is the like you go away and then you come back. And, I think that sort of send and receive has broken down in many instances. And I think it's part of one of the reasons why I think that there is greater skepticism around universities. I think there's a number of communities that think, oh, yeah, you take our children and then you never give them back because they moved to Boise and then they want to stay there or, whatever.
Right. Or they move to Palo Alto and they never come back to Boise. I suppose
Exactly.
It depends what community you're moving from.
Definitely.
Like the brain drain is real.
Yes. And goes elaborately
Yeah.
in lots of different directions. I mean, I think that there's quite a diaspora out there of students like you that grew up in Idaho and then never came back.
Dr. Jared Talley, actually, I had a great conversation with him, and he was talking about the lack of imagination that people have with employment opportunities. And he's like, we have this problem where, universities outside of the state of Idaho poach our best and brightest. And no one's ever saying like, hey, man, there's a lot of opportunity for you back in Idaho. They're saying like, no, stay here. And his commentary was really that there needs to be a greater communication and of opportunity, as well as a greater imagination of how Idaho could benefit from, for instance, highly world-class trained STEM professionals, like within agriculture, within, obviously you have Micron and stuff, but you have industry that it's like, could you revolutionize the timber industry? Could you revolutionize, the whatever industries might exist, potato, sugar beet, whatever it is. I thought that was so interesting because we do live in an era of infinite potential for individuals. So it's like, all you need is the question, right? All you need is the imagination, right? All you need is like, how do you start working out this problem instead of a de facto decision of, okay, well, there's nothing here for me. It's like, well, invent something for yourself.
Right.
Like find a way, like have a value proposition.
Well, and it's one reason, and Jarrett helped shape the Masters of Environmental Management that we have at Boise State, and it was very much for that exact reason that when federal agencies, state agencies, industries are hiring people at the next level, they're almost entirely recruiting from out of state. But what if we take really talented undergraduates that are already here and help them accelerate their degree into environmental management while they're here. And then they're the ones that are able to help shape the state, right?
Yeah.
And to transform these industries, because so many of the places where there is an opportunity for not just that imagination, but for cultivating this sense of emotional infrastructure and cultivating the ways in which that the particularities of a place like Idaho can be understood, that so much of that comes from within. And it is best served by people that want to be here, whether they were born here or not, but that are here for a reason and not here on accident. And I think a lot of the way that the academic world has been structured is to plop people down as if place doesn't matter, right? And searches are national, and job recruitment is almost entirely agnostic of place. And that's one reason why I ended up in the South before I was able to come back to Boise, because it's sort of a mark of distinction that a university is able to recruit nationally and bring someone else in. And I think that there is a lot for us to, as a university, to invest in if we give credit to people that are here because they want to be here, or that are willing, even if they haven't been here, to understand the very distinct nuances of what makes a place unique, and to make sure that our research is focused on that and not just on, wherever else in the world needs attention. And I don't think that there is enough. I mean, if we don't study Idaho, who will?
Right. And a desire to mimic other places, right? This is a criticism that, well, but perhaps not a criticism, but an observation from one of the presidents of the universities or colleges within Idaho, that it's like, most universities in and out of Idaho essentially tend towards, maybe in 100 years, we could be Harvard. Like maybe it's 200 years, but they view themselves as some version of maturity that eventually arrives at Harvard, instead of saying, okay, but first off, we don't need to be Harvard, right? We need to figure out what the core competencies and functions and needs of the community are, right? I actually went to the annual mining convention at the Grove, which was really cool.
I went to that too.
Yeah, super cool. And I saw the workforce. There was a workforce committee that gave like a forum, right? And they were talking about what the industry needs from the education system to thrive, because the education system wants to produce degrees and people that are going to thrive and support and, promote, like engage successfully in the community, right? Produce something valuable. And the industry needs those people. So this person wants to create the student that can go into the mining industry, and the mining industry needs that person, right? And the person themselves needs employment and some path forward throughout the world, right? And just that, it's like, okay, do you need to be Harvard if you need to educate more mining techs? Right? Like, what is the function of your university and what's the end goal of the education? And if you just say like, it's education for education's sake, okay, there is a place for that, but perhaps not at more than like one university, right? Or perhaps not at more than one university per a couple states. And definitely not at a university that potentially is public access that really needs to justify its expenditures to the populace that's paying for it. Because if you tell a taxpayer in Idaho, we're going to educate kids not for mining tech or any actual, like, it's just going to be education for education's sake, that's a really tough pill to swallow. They're like, hang on a sec, man. Right. Like I'm all for people, but we also need, like, we don't live in a state that has the degree of abundance and liberalism with taxation that can just afford to just fire hose just for education's sake.
Well, I think that there is something that AI is pushing us also to consider a little bit more. And I would articulate it as a need for more specific knowledges and skills rather than general. And I think what AI models have taught us is that there is an easier shortcut to get general, average, like C- level, adequate understandings and writing. But there is a lot to be learned in the sort of specifics of whether it's how you pull copper out of a particular part of the ground, or what it takes in order to understand a particular painting, for example. And the very specificity of the development of those skills will make that student and future worker more nimble no matter what happens with AI, more nimble no matter, what becomes invented that we haven't even thought of that will employ them. And I wish that we talked more about how leaning into the specificity I don't think we'll ever pretend to replicate Harvard, although we did joke that the environmental management was modeled after Yale. So we're the Yale of Southwest Idaho.
Oh my God.
So we'll give you that. But
it's more like Yale is the Boise State of the East.
Well, thank you. Obviously.
There you go.
Yeah. See me about the MEM.
Yeah.
We're the one in the West. But there's something about, I think, leaning into the really interesting and important specific skills that come with sitting in front of a painting for a really long time. And so you see all of the details and are able to absorb them, that teaches you habits of mind and powers of observation that can be translated into all kinds of other things and not necessarily mimicked or replicated well by machines or sort of generalizable things. And those are the things that I think are worth not just investing in, but in cultivating in students as part of their training to be better humans for the rest of their life, right? Not just employees or sort of cogs in a wheel, but people that are willing to be imaginative in thinking about the future and about thinking about the world that they want to help cultivate and create.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot from a communication and podcast standpoint. Because again, like communication is very hard to teach via AI. Like maybe you could write something, but there's something about music is made in between the notes, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get that from Grok.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you might even be able to write, and you know what I can't wait for? I can't wait for the complete implosion of all written Substacks, because like the number of articles that are coming out now, the breakneck pace, the incredibly, like you see somebody who just talks all this trash. He's like a total Facebook troll, all of these things. Then he's like, check my Substack. And it's this beautifully written, like research detailed. There's like, what a jump. It's like, this isn't even you.
No,
it's definitely not you. Clearly not you. But the thing that I've been thinking about is that I did all of the interviews for the Treasure Valley for city council and mayors in this last November election. And it was like, it almost killed me. I was like, I can't, this is too much. Right. And there were calls. People were like, hey, how come you didn't come to this area? How come you didn't make it this far? Blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, I think what has to happen is for people that are interested, there needs to be a way to help people learn how to communicate in a way that would create a platform that could bring people onto a show. So Idaho Falls has somebody, so that Twin Falls, so Coeur d'Alene, so all of these places, Moscow, they have people that understand, if they want to, how to create and cultivate a platform where you could have these types of conversations, and we can ultimately take our communities back from, news media and the medias that are corporately owned, predominantly nationally owned. And it's like, no, this is from Moscow. This is from Moscow for Moscow, or like this is from Twin for Twin. And these are people that like, it's a skill set. There's an art to it that I don't think you can do. You can't really learn it off of AI. And I'm not even saying I'm the best person to teach it, but I am saying like there's something there, right? Helping the next generation of Idahoans create their own information platforms in a way that is not, I need this so that my side wins, right? Because that's what everybody's already doing. Like you want people on the left, you want people on the right, makes no difference. Everybody wants their side to win. And that will never cultivate an even platform where all parties will cooperate and participate rather.
Yeah. And I absolutely applaud. And I think the heart of that is those places, right? Like you're defining it by what it means to be Coeur d'Alene or Moscow. And there's something that is so innately human and humanizing about leaning into that as the vehicle for which we can use to come together. And maybe that's also Idaho, right? Idaho's still a small town, but there's certainly something in those cities and those sort of smaller groups where it is a community of people that share more than they divide over. And being able to lean into the ways that they share by telling stories that speak to the attributes of that particular place, I think is a way to get out of this hyper-trolled corporate profit-making enterprise that not only makes us more inclined to conspiracy theories, it makes us less inclined to sit across the table and have a conversation. And there are things about that I think are at the very core of our humanity that cannot be replaced. And some of those are educational, but some of them are just the very humanness of having a conversation. And we're seeing people lose those skills, right? And this is not unrelated to the epidemic of loneliness and the, sort of suicide rates and just the sort of overall depression. And that is very much a function of, I think, number one, not appreciating and learning to love the places in which we're in, if we don't have a choice to choose a different one, and then the people that inhabit it with us. And there's a kind of disposition that I think we can be cultivating in our students and our children that makes them curious about those other people. And it's that curiosity that I think leads to really good things. And those impulses towards belonging come out of answers to those questions of curiosity.
Man, God bless all that. You're just striking chords with me today. I'm like, I can't. Yeah. Listen, I love all this. As far as places, like where else are you guys sending grad students? Are you sending them to McCall to like hang out in McCall? Like I'm curious.
We did. So we had 6 last year. We just got applications. We'll do another, or we had 7 last year. We'll do another 7 this year. And then we have funding for 1/3 year. So that'll be next summer. And the students, so part of this is also that they are self-designed by the students. So they're graduate students, and we are trying to test how much they're being self-driven and designing their own projects gives them the initiative and also the responsibility to kind of drive it. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but this generation is definitely the rubric generation and the like, give me the directions, tell me how to do it. What am I supposed to do? Who's supervising me? And we're trying to invert that and say, go do your dream job. We'll give you a stipend, go live in this community and do something awesome. Basically no strings attached, except you have to reflect on it and tell us at the end what all you did and how you accomplished.
How do I get in on this?
Yeah,
program?
I know. I want to do it. I know. I can't.
You're already Dr. Wakild.
I know.
I'm an idiot with a BA.
Well, like, come do an MEM with us. We'd love to have you back.
MEM is Masters of Environmental Management.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I do it from the studio?
No, it has to be place-based. You got to get out of the basement.
Place-based. It is place-based.
This is a place.
This is a place. Boise is a place. And it's not a place I grew up. Yeah. And it's not even a place. I don't live in Boise. So what if I was like, I would like to understand the place that is Boise? And I will do that through informative interviews with notable people in the state all day long, all day strong. Come on, tell me that wouldn't be an awesome.
That would be an awesome
thesis. I'm in. How many years is this?
2. It's a 2-year program, unless you sign up for it your junior year, and then you can do it as a +1.
Okay, well, I can't do that.
That doesn't apply to you.
So it would be 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, do I have to take the GRE?
No.
No GRE.
Do not.
I'll write a great essay. When's the enrollment? When's the application?
There will be another application round in March. Due in March. So one just closed, and then we can talk again.
Okay. 24 months and I'm Matt Todd with a master's.
Matt Todd with the master's.
Todd with the master's. And guess what? Nobody would understand Boise better than me. I would understand this place so well.
You would have a great perspective.
It would be unique. It would be unique. I would do things awesome. And I get a stipend?
Yes. For the place-based part. You can do the master's without the place-based, but
You know what? It would be awesome if I used the stipend, since I have a place to live, and I actually created a better studio, which was a place where people could hang and like come through, and it was like cold. It would be wild.
Oh.
Come on, I have some ideas.
You have
It'd
some.
be great.
It'd
be great. Just put a good word for me. Anyway, listen.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it. We still have our animal conversation that we're going to have.
We do. And I've been thinking about turkeys. Yeah, we need to talk about animals again.
Dude, I told you that I interviewed the guy who introduced wild turkeys to Idaho. Yeah. It's fantastic. Like I was also showing somebody this last Thanksgiving, the turkeys that exist in Central and Southern America that are like, you're aware. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're these like rainforest turkeys that, if it's black and white, you're like, yeah, that's a turkey. The second you turn on the color, you're like, whoa, because the feathers are like blue and brilliant different colors. Everything you would expect from a rainforest animal. But looking at those and then looking at the American turkey, like the North American turkey, you realize how colorful that bird is. It's not as colorful as the brilliant blue from like the Central America and South America one, but man, it is a beautiful bird.
Yes.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I actually have a plan.
Okay.
My son's really into birds, my oldest son. And we have this carport that we're going to turn into a chicken coop. I'm going to make it an aviary. I'm going to put in birds that can survive like the Idaho winter, and I'll get like a little bird house.
You can get peacocks too. There's peacocks.
Flying birds. Flying like parakeets
like an
and stuff.
aviary, like with a
there's
net?
an Australian parrot. Yeah, so it's a carport, right? So I just have to put like the 1/4-inch mesh along all the sides and then do like a double door. And then he will be able to go in, tend to the chickens, and there will be this aviary where these other birds are flying around.
Fascinating.
Yes, it will be so cool. Yeah, so like I've been thinking about birds a lot. That's it. That's my whole story.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be great.
Anyway. It's going to be great. Yeah.
Dr. Wakild, thank you for coming in. I so appreciate you. We'll do this again. We'll talk about turkeys.
Sounds great.